Hale and Wessel were in western Indiana to start their trip when a young man by the name of David Shellcraft left his Albin, Illinois farmhouse and drove down the country mill to where his parents lived. David shared an evening meal with his mom and dad. It might easily have been their last supper together. Stephen Allen Hale was born in 1977 in Washington, Indiana, just a few miles south of Indianapolis, with his partner Chalky Wessel, also known as Chuck Wessel. He grew up in extremely violent circumstances, ridiculed with and abuse. Both were extremely bullied from the time they started elementary school, with Wessel being bullied the most severely. He was doing and was bullied for being too short, according to one source, as he was going to be a ticking time bomb and go off at any time, regardless of what people thought about him. In a 2016 phone call my mother had with an unknown source that was never recorded, Wessel got picked on more than Hale did, with both using extreme amounts. Almost hard to comprehend for the age of around 10 years old. However, not much else is known about the two suspects, except for what happened on the day of April Fool's Day, 1998, as a two-state shooting spree took place, starting in southern Indiana and moving closer to central Illinois. You have to keep in mind, both suspects were extremely high on substances such as both suspects may have experienced a deep psychosis and mania even during the day of the attack. While David enjoyed his mother's home cooking, Hale and Wessel enjoyed a mix of. They roamed the Indiana Territory just east of the Wabash River, leaving a trail of human remains in their wake. David completed his evening visit and prepared to return home, but as he exited the front door, an old friend passed by. Larry Sams decided to stop and share a few moments with his old buddy. It proved to be a fatal mistake. The spring foliage on the trees had not yet filled to a point that prevented David from seeing his own house from his front porch. As he and Larry stood there chatting, David noticed a mysterious green car entering his driveway. Its occupants seemed to be inspecting David's home, his barn, and the surrounding grounds. David decided to investigate. He asked Larry if he would mind coming along to lend support. Larry gladly agreed. The two companions got into David's pickup truck and drove off to confront the two silos in the green car that continued to troll the grounds next to David's house. The green Camaro in David's driveway was the property of Pam Cook, but she was not in it. About the same time that David started to dine with his folks, Pam had attended to knock at her front door. When she greeted the stranger attending outside, he answered with the barrel of a pistol and demanded for her Camaro. After she readily surrendered her keys, she received an unkind bullet to the temple. Pam had died on her front porch a few hours later. David and Larry were about to meet her killers, who were looking to trade one stolen vehicle, according to reports. Pam Cook was the third Indiana resident to have the misfortune of running into Hale and Wessel that day. Jeremiah Miller and Marlon Knepp of Lagodi each had their brief encounter with them. They too died from gunshot wounds to the head. About 7 p.m. that same evening, while Indiana authorities continued to discover the dead body, Hale and Wessel crossed the Wabash River into Illinois. They pulled into a Casey's General Store in Albin, Illinois. Wessel aroused the manager's suspicion by purchasing weird items such as duct tape, leather gloves, and a pair of pliers and a set of screwdrivers. Thinking that Wessel was up to no good, the manager instructed a co-worker to get the license number off the green Camaro resting on the parking lot. Wessel saw what was happening, and he threw a large amount of money onto the counter and told the cashier to keep the change before rushing out of the store and into the car. He drove away in a hasty fashion. The encounter was reported to the Albany Police Department, who traced the car to the reported murder of Pam Cook in Indiana. Hale and Wessel, worried that the store manager would report their driver's license to police, and decided to ditch Pam Cook's Camaro. They drove it to the countryside in search of a different vehicle, as their search led them up to David Chalcraft's driveway. Having discovered that Chalcraft's farm offered no vehicle to steal, Hale and Wessel decided to leave. As they drove down the long and narrow driveway, intent on finding another ride elsewhere, as their search for another vehicle ended. David and Larry arrived at David's pickup truck. The pickup and Camaro converged to a stop 5 feet apart and squarely facing each other. There was nowhere for either vehicle to go. The two vehicles met at a path where the driveway rested atop a steep embankment, and effectively blocked both vehicles from further movement. Hale and Wessel had proceeded to do what they wanted: get a vehicle to replace the one that law enforcement would now be looking for, as their method of vehicular hijacking spelled an imminent danger for David and Larry. It was a dark and cold night. David left his truck running and his headlights on as he exited his pickup truck. The Camaro's headlights were off, enabling David to see the two occupants inside before David approached the driver, intent on finding out his purposes for being there. He was about to find out with that inquiry. Wessel sat in the driver's seat, armed and ready for the kill. The driver opened the door, and David leaned forward to ask Hale and Wessel about their presence on this farm. Wessel thrust his weapon in the direction of David's head. David flinched from what he thought was an effort to hit him, and Wessel shot him at point-blank range. Because of his reaction, David was spared a bullet to the head. The bullet passed through his neck instead. Fortunately, Wessel, now experienced at the effect of a point-blank headshot, did not know that he missed his target. Moreover, his attention immediately turned to Larry Sims. As David spun to the ground, he saw Larry in front of his pickup. He saw Hale standing in front of Larry. David started to fall down the embankment, and the last thing that he saw was Hale shooting his own old friend almost right between the eyes. David laid motionless at the bottom of the bank. Wessel decided to ensure David's fate, firing him another shot as the bullet slammed onto the ground next to David, and as he had the presence of mind to remain still. Immediately thereafter, he could hear Hale and Wessel walking toward Larry. He heard a barrage of gunfire from two different weapons. What David heard was Hale and Wessel planting a host of bullets into Larry's body. David could hear Larry gasp for air, and the details are too violent for me to share otherwise. Next, David heard either Hale or Wessel get into the Camaro and back it into the direction of the house. As for the other guy in the pickup truck, the truck was driven toward David's house as well, as police were hot on their case to find Hale and Wessel, as the Camaro was finally stopped by police after attempting to flee the scene. The Camaro was backing up into the direction of Larry, and the shotgun was in hand as he started the pickup and drove toward Hale and Wessel for a second encounter. Hale and Wessel might have stayed finishing off David and obtained a replacement vehicle. However, David Chalcraft's survival and grit, along with the barrel of a shotgun hanging out of the window, must have unnerved them. Rather than engage in a duel in order to retake the pickup, Hale and Wessel ran. Apparently, they had no stomach for gunplay unless their prey was helpless and unarmed. David did not give chase. He drove to his parents' house and called the sheriff. He spent the next 2 days in the hospital. After David's report, the authorities closed in quickly. Spearheaded by a helicopter with a searchlight, the police mounted a full-scale search of the area. They located the Camaro, abandoned several miles away in a cemetery, as officers now were on the ground and hearing a series of gunshots. They found Wessel dead with a gunshot wound in the head. The gun in Wessel's right hand fired a bullet later removed from his head. The police found Hale in a short order. He was unarmed and appeared to be in a state of bewilderment. He was asked but could not answer how Wessel had died before being arrested. In the end, 5 people died, including Chalky Wessel, and another man was severely wounded in the incident that ended before dawn that Thursday afternoon, as police raced all night to find the suspects, with helicopters inspecting a wheat field where the suspects were taking refuge. After being treated at an Evansville hospital, Hale was charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder, appearing before Circuit Judge John Lundmark. His bond was set for $1 million, and Lundmark even asked the suspect Stephen Hale what his name was. "Yep," he answered, according to the Herald Times in 1998. Afterwards, relatives of the victims' families expressed anger and frustration at the hearing, with one guy being Gary Chalcraft. He's saying, quote, "I wish one of the 10 officers would have put a bullet in him. I wish one of them would have shot him." Hale was captured at about 3 a.m. in rural Edwards County in southeastern Illinois, near the spot of the alleged accomplice. Chalky Wessel, as we mentioned, at 19, took his own life, and we honor the other victims, being Jeremiah Miller, Marlon Knapp, Pam Cook, and David L. Chalcraft, who was also severely wounded and made a full recovery after the incident. Now, if you hear about Stephen Hale, you're not going to hear about him much, as he is still sitting in prison with a life sentence. But little did this community of small and quiet promise know or even knew what was about to happen on that fateful day in April 1998, as it was a shock to us all.